This meeting takes place at a crucial time. The Asia-Pacific region is a fulcrum for international migration, home to the world's largest and most important countries of origin and destination. We have it all. Our region has long welcomed migrants, whether for economic benefits or to accommodate those displaced. At the same time, people have left their homes in search of new opportunities or in response to difficult circumstances. The region has been responsive to changing circumstances, and its dynamism has driven countries of origin to also become countries of destination. Many of the key policy innovators have proactively pursued enabling and conducive migration policies and implemented practices to mainstream them. A few of the region's characteristics are noteworthy. Levels of migration in the region are high. Over 101 million people from countries of the region, more than the entire population of Vietnam, live outside their countries of birth. Migrants from our region are working all around the world, though primarily they remain within Asia and the Pacific. For us, it of course includes some of the associate member countries. Migrants form a distinct group and exhibit enormous potential, but are also exposed to a range of vulnerabilities. Migrants are often poorly paid, concentrated in labor work, employed in low-skilled jobs, and in the informal sector requiring difficult and sometimes dangerous physical sectors and labor. Female labor migrants are often employed as domestic workers, a largely unregulated sector where they are exposed to risks of exploitation and abuse at the hand of their employers. Yet, despite these challenges that many migrants face, they make invaluable contribution to both their countries of origin and destination. Wage disparities between domestic and overseas workers are significant, and migrants, given their family compulsion, end up remitting the bulk of their earnings to their countries of origin and hence live in distressful conditions. The Asia-Pacific region benefits from a high level of remittances that have reached close to 276 billion in 2017. In countries such as Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Nepal, this made up the equivalent of over a quarter of their respective GDP in 2015. Besides serving as buffer for balance of payments, households have been able to use these funds to finance housing, education, and livelihood of their families. For instance, remittances to Kyrgyzstan are estimated to have reduced the poverty rate by 6 to 7 percentage points. Further research by ESCAP shows that in the Pacific, migrants have contributed to increased resilience and adaptation in the face of climate change. Beside the positive impact of migration in countries of origin, countries of destination benefit too in terms of meeting skill shortages, higher productivity, and returns on their investment. The Asia-Pacific Migration Report 2015, produced by an ESCAP and IOM-led interagency thematic working group on international migration, showed that migrant contributions accounted for anywhere between 3.1 and 6.2% of GDP in Thailand, or equivalent to anywhere between $12 to $24 billion. Migrants' contribution to the economy is impressive, particularly in the backdrop of the barriers they face. These include One, the high cost of migration that can render migrants worse off. High cost of sending remittances, lack of effective policies in low-skilled labor migration, which can push employers and migrants to resort to irregularities to the detriment of migrants' rights, limitations on the ability of migrants to access social services or participate in the public sphere, creating a de facto reserve army of exploitable labor with negative impacts on all workers, non-migrant and migrant alike. Laws which prevent migrants from being able to move with their families, thus creating pressures on family members who are left behind, especially children, offsetting the material benefits of migration and placing new burdens of care on families. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I was giving you this overview and a little elaborate one because you shall not hear me after this particular presentation. I am proceeding to New York. Migrants, of course, could serve as agents for sustainable development as we have embarked on sustainable development agenda implication in this round. Of course, migrants serving as agents of sustainable development factor in how they boost financing, consumption, and investment and contribute to growth. In addition to reducing the poverty rate, migration creates new connections whose benefits transcend localities and borders. Yet, as non-citizens of their country of residence and non-residents of their countries of citizenship, they are often bypassed in both home and host countries. As a result, their rights are often not respected. Their contributions may go unrecognized, and they can become the scapegoats for the failures of others. In a world on the move, addressing these challenges directly is all the more critical. As the climate changes, people face new pressures to migrate. Migration must be recognized as a means of building resilience against climate shocks. Given the economic dynamism of the region and aging of population in many countries, migrants can play an even bigger role in filling labor force gaps until host countries resolve the fundamental issues of aging. With growing regional connectivity, the region will need its labor force to take further advantage of opportunities generated, but beyond the impact of goods and services, this will also spur people-to-people connectivity. So despite the overwhelming agenda, the complexity of this agenda, it is impressive, in my view, how United Nations members are committed to ensuring orderly, safe, regular, and responsible migration in the context of the 2030 Agenda. Your efforts to fleshing out challenges and problems will help making this a reality. Countries of origin, such as Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, the Philippines, Sri Lanka have developed extensive infrastructure to protect migrants throughout the migration process from pre-departure to return. And I do hope that the rest of the world will learn from the best practices we have in our region. Countries receiving large volume of migrants such as Kazakhstan, the Republic of Korea, and the Russian Federation have taken pragmatic measures to open up regular paths to labor migration with protections for migrants and their population. Thailand has cooperated with countries of origin, introduced laws to address abuses against migrants, as well as promoted the inclusion of migrants in the national health system. Across the region, under the aegis of United Nations and along with all stakeholders, including civil society, there has been advocacy, dialogue, and cooperation to prevent unilateral measures that might aggravate migrants' vulnerabilities. So let me conclude. We count that all will continue to transcend old, entrenched positions and reach consensus, recognizing the need for taking action through economic, social, and environmental policies to safeguard the rights and interests of all migrants, high and low-skilled workers alike. The ESCAP report in front of you towards safe, orderly, and regular migration in the Asia-Pacific region, launched on this occasion, will offer this comprehensive analysis of the regional trends of migration, its drivers, impacts, and policy measures undertaken by countries to help guide our discussion over the coming days. This platform will further be an opportunity to cross-fertilize policy and practical experiences, lessons learned, and best practices both from the region and across the world. Your perspectives, your voice, will form valuable inputs for the forthcoming global preparatory stock-taking meeting for the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration in Mexico in December, and the negotiation in New York next year. And it's all in good hands of our SRSG, but also with the good efforts of His Excellency, Mr. Swing from IOM. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all the inputs that you have been giving us.
Thank you, Dr. Akhtar. Your eloquent address underscores the critical importance of facilitating safe, orderly, and regular migration for sustainable development in the region and globally. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I now have the pleasure of inviting Mr. William Swing, Director General of the International Organization for Migration, to deliver his opening remarks. Mr. Swing, please.
Good morning. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's both an honor and a privilege to be asked to share in this event today. I'm here to listen and to learn, and I will be very brief in a few remarks that I have to make. I want to express my gratitude to the host government of Thailand and to ESCAP and its distinguished Executive Secretary, our good friend and colleague for many years. I'm also particularly honored to be part of the panel like this today, particularly in the presence of Louise Arbour, the Special Representative Secretary General for International Migration and the Secretary General of the Intergovernmental Conference to be held in 2018. It's always a special honor to share the podium with her. And we have another good friend who's about to arrive, Ambassador Juan Jose Gomez Camacho of Mexico, one of the two co-facilitators. So I'm really deeply honored to be here and humbled by the chance to participate with these colleagues of ours. I would like to make 3 points very much related to the ESCAP area. First point is that this is a compact that is of great historic significance. I use that word advisedly. We throw around historic a bit too much. I believe it to be. Secondly, I'd like to talk about the regional actors' key role in the Global Compact process. And thirdly, to talk about the unique contributions that the Asia-Pacific area has to offer based on a lot of the reasons that were so eloquently outlined for you by the Executive Secretary. First of all, the historic significance of the Global Compact. It is a historic opportunity to fill a lot of gaps that have occurred since the Geneva Convention of 1951 and the stateless act that followed it, for the number of people that are on the move who have no international legal frameworks to protect or support them. Not that we're talking about a new legal framework in the Global Compact, but some understandings. It's also an opportunity to define the global migration agenda for decades to come at a level that we've never seen before, at the level of heads of state. So this is taking place amidst a daunting challenge of a period in which migration has become a very negative word and concept in the public mind. It's coming at a time when we have 9 armed conflicts from the western bulge of Africa to the Himalayas and beyond. I've just come back from Libya. I've just come back from Yemen. Just come back from Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, and we see more and more conflicts there. We have a period of anti-migrant sentiments, very widespread and growing. We have a violation of international humanitarian law on all sides, a serious erosion of international moral authority, a lack of political leadership on these key issues, and no hope in the short to medium term to resolve any of these conflicts and crises. So these are problems that we face. It gives us a very toxic atmosphere for the negotiations, but there is strong reason for encouragement. By this I would say, we are not starting from scratch. What we are talking about in the Global Compact, in my point of view, is not the beginning, but the culmination of a process that's been in train for decades. The first of the 21 regional consultation processes that exist in the world today are more than 30 years old. We've had the Berne Initiative. We've had the appointment of a special representative, a Secretary General for International Migration and Development in the year 2007. The same year, we had the iteration of a global forum on migration and development, started in Brussels, came to the Philippines after that, and is now in its 10th iteration to be held in December of next year in Morocco. We have also many other foundations on which we can build. The first ever head of state meeting on migration at the UN General Assembly last September 19, in which both these global compacts were agreed upon that we would negotiate, a global compact on refugees, a global compact on migration, and the event that brought the International Organization for Migration into the UN system. Current Secretary General used to say that although we were born and joined at the hip in 1951 with UNHCR, they lost our birth certificate. We found it. We're back. So I want to mention then that beyond that, that migration is a mega trend of our time. There are more people on the move than ever before. There's instant information. There's cheap, easy transport, and people are aware of where to go and where to avoid. We are looking at the largest number of people, more than 250 million international migrants and about 750 million domestic migrants. Now we know from one experience alone, Libya, fall of Gaddafi in February of 2011, migrants are invisible in a time of crisis. There are no consulates or embassies who've registered them. Many of them are there in an irregular mode. And when the crisis starts, they are the most helpless of all. That has to change. Somehow that we've got to come back to a more reasonable position. So we are committed to developing a comprehensive framework to facilitate safe, orderly, and regular migration. Compact will do a lot of things, including giving us a means of implementation, some common commitments, some actionable commitments, and a way in which to follow up and continue to work on the knotty issues that may not make it into the compact. Second point is that regional actors have a key role to play in the Global Compact on Migration. Whatever is negotiated at national or international level is ultimately going to play out at the regional level. The whole question of the modalities resolution foresaw that a Global Compact would have to include a regional perspective, and that's why we're gathered here today. And I believe that of all of the regional meetings, this is probably the most important one for reasons that have already been stated. IOM has helped to use the 7th global meeting of the Regional Compacts on Migration to try to come up with a regional perspective to support the process being led by the Special Representative, the Secretary General. There's a need to strengthen our partnership at all levels if we're going to succeed. The third point is the uniqueness of the Asia-Pacific area. We're talking about an area that has 60% of all of the migrants in the world today, increasing regional coordination, a wide spectrum of driving forces, climatic change, natural disasters, conflicts, and other reasons that drive people to go abroad. The largest number of remittances in the world of any region, the largest number of women who are migrating, many, many reasons that make this such an important meeting that we have here today. So I hope that we will be able to pursue a course today that will bring us closer to one another and closer to a compact that can be supported by all. In conclusion, let me just simply say that we are hoping to see a compact that will help us to do everything possible to facilitate regular migration, to limit irregular migration, and to ensure that the human rights of all migrants are protected while they're underway and after they arrive at their destination. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swing, for your most articulate and compelling opening remarks. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I now have the pleasure of inviting Ms. Louise Arbour, Special Representative of the Secretary General of the United Nations for International Migration, to deliver her keynote address.
Ms. Shamshad Akhtar, Executive Secretary of the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, Mr. Bill Swing, Director General of the International Organization of Migration, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a very great pleasure for me to be here in Bangkok today for the final preparatory meeting organized by the United Nations Regional Economic Commissions. And I wish to thank ESCAP and the co-organizing agencies, and also actually all of you distinguished participants for joining in this timely discussion. While the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development fully integrates international migration in a global development framework, the New York Declaration took that commitment one step further by recognizing that no one state alone can deliver on better governing migration in a manner that is people-centered, cooperative, and forward-looking, which is the aim of the Global Compact to develop a compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration to be adopted in the fall of 2018. So today I'm looking forward to hearing the experiences from the Asia-Pacific region. I know that much of your work through ESCAP, as well as through the regional consultative processes, such as the Bali and the Colombo process and the Abu Dhabi dialogue, will have much to contribute to our discussion. But allow me to highlight a few issues that I consider particularly important for the development of this global compact. Migration has been a positive force for millions of people, migrants themselves, those they leave behind, and the new communities who host them. And yet, perceptions of migrants as a burden or even as a threat have risen in some countries from the fringes to the mainstream. The result is both rising intolerance and an environment in which vocal anti-migration sentiments fester. We cannot expect all sectors of public opinion to change dramatically in the short time frame that is given to us for the adoption of this global compact, but I think we depend on our collective leadership to anchor the debate in reality, not in myths, stereotypes, and misperceptions. And one aspect of that reality is that most migration takes place within the same region. In 2015, the Asia-Pacific region hosted 60 million migrants from around the world, while also being a region of origin for some 98 million migrants. And I have in my notes here some 40% of all international migrants worldwide, but I heard Mr. Swing refer to 60%. Presumably that's the reason we're here today, to get our numbers straight from you, who know your region much better than individually or collectively we do. Most of the migrants today are South-South migrants, remaining within the same region or migrating to nearby countries, in this case, for instance, to the Gulf Cooperation Council. Migration itself is complex, not just based on one motivating factor or one sole experience. While many people move through free choice, many others are compelled to leave their home. Many find themselves in acute need of assistance and protection during a long journey to an uncertain destination. The experience for states is also multifaceted. Increasingly, many states are all at once states of origin, transit, and destination countries, and they need to adjust their national policies accordingly. The many challenges of migration, inclusion in host communities, irregular migration, smuggling and trafficking, forced displacement, such as induced by climate change, all of these are inextricably linked, as are the opportunities that come from labor migration, student migration, or migration to reunite families. The effect of these challenges and opportunities are felt by migrants, they're felt by host communities, and by governments alike. Let us look together at one particular area, labor migration, which I understand is the predominant form and motivation for migration in this particular region. As you well know, when grounded in sound policies that are well-planned, gender-responsive, and rights-based, labor migration can deliver significant benefits and opportunities for migrant workers, states, and host communities, as well as for countries of origin. It can contribute to economic growth, create jobs, and promote innovation. I understand that remittances totaled almost $269 billion for this region last year, and for some countries, as was mentioned before, it accounted for a very significant portion of their GDP. While labor migration is a strong motivation factor, we must recognize the critical difference between regular and irregular migration. Except in some sought-after, mainly high-skilled professions, many labor migrants are pushed towards irregular migration channels. In the absence of regular pathways, the informal economy in destination countries will remain a strong pull factor, providing irregular migrants with jobs that ensure their survival despite their irregular status. But as we know, many of them work under exploitative conditions, they face barriers to access fundamental services, and are often unable to seek protection from the state due to their migratory status. But it's important to keep in mind that these migrants are neither a driver nor the unique source of labor in the informal economy. Yet efforts to curtail irregular migration tends to focus overwhelmingly on repressive border governance measures, including criminalization of migrants, detention, or fast-track returns. These policies have shown themselves to be mostly ineffective in the longer term, often only intensifying migrants' vulnerabilities, pushing them further underground, and eroding the rule of law, which is actually exactly the opposite effect from that intended. States can mitigate irregular migration by creating more legal pathways, especially by means of labor-related migration opportunities. Barriers to regular migration that do not respond to labor market realities will likely result in greater irregular migration, resulting in negative outcomes for all concerns, migrants, states, and host communities. At the same time, we must acknowledge that the supply of labor from countries with large working-age populations may very well exceed the demands of other countries, even those with aging population, and we must as well acknowledge that the state's sovereign prerogative to return irregular migrants. But at the end of the day, safe, orderly, and regular access to jobs in the formal economies of all countries experiencing labor shortages in any sector should go a long way to reducing recourse to irregular migration. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the Global Compact can have a profound impact for many. It will encourage states to cooperate on a whole range of international migration issues, thereby facilitating safe, orderly, and regular migration, not curtailing it. In doing so, particular attention should be given to the need for robust social inclusion programs that focus on benefiting all members of the communities and not encourage, even unintentionally, suspicion and discord between newcomers and hosts. A new cooperation framework at the global level, therefore, should incorporate both the experiences and lessons learned from the existing regional mechanisms, such as from ESCAP, as well as the numerous regional consultative processes, and the renewed commitment for cooperation on key migration issues at the multilateral setting. I wish you very good deliberations in the next few days. I will take very good notes, and I hope that we'll get our numbers straight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Abba, for your inspiring address. I would now like to invite the Secretary to make an announcement.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we will now conclude this opening ceremony and take a break. We would like to invite heads of delegations to join a group photo. Delegates with E-badges are requested to proceed to the area outside Conference Room 1, which is to this side, where the group photo will be taken. ESCAP Secretariat staff will guide you. I kindly request you to return to the meeting room by 10:15. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.
Before everybody leaves, I wanted to beg your leave because I will be leaving for New York to join Secretary General CB. Plus also there is a Global Migration Compact meeting. So I want to thank you once again for being here, and you are in good hands, I know, of all our colleagues here. Thank you.
One of the most powerful stories of human history is the story of migration. And taken to the high seas in search of a better life for themselves and their children. Migration has been a cornerstone in the structural transformation of empires and countries.
These are the Asia
Practices and existing international
102 million people from countries in the Asia-Pacific region.
Innovative, and we have to give it a rap.
For the first time, the world is coming together through the United Nations to explore new ways to manage migration. Motivated by the multiple migration crises across the world and inspired by the 2030 Agenda